Hello, welcome to the Talking City podcast, the Manchester City podcast from the Manchester Evening News. We're still here, despite some attempts to get rid of us, and we've seen City draw with Liverpool in a big top-of-the-table clash in the Premier League. It's one of them, I think, at full time you think it was always going to be 1-1, but we'll dive into what happened. Could City have won it? Is it drop points? Is it a point gained? But we do know that the unbeaten run at home has come to an end. It wasn't unbeaten, was it? It was winning. It was 23 wins in a row.
Still unbeaten.
Do you know what? I've had a week off and you'll be able to tell that I'm still a little bit rusty. I'm Joe Bray, joining me is Simon Bajkowski. I hope you're a bit more awake than I am.
Well, yes, but I wish I wasn't. But we'll crack on, shall we?
It's the weather's not helping, isn't it?
No, it's what a Monday morning this is.
But we'll crack on. It was nicer on Saturday. It was looked like a lovely wintry day.
So cold. I can't remember at a time the Etihad has been as cold as that for I would say like a year, as in it's cold always at this time of the year, but it was particularly biting, and with it sort of being like 12:30 as well, not much recovery game for these guys. I can't imagine the weather helped the players or the fans really.
Yeah, sometimes you hear about them saying that wet is good sometimes to get tackles flying in and that sort of thing. It's something that's so simple that it's often kind of written off, but sometimes it is just as basic as you think about. Like, well, it is harder to play when it's that bit colder. Mm-hmm. And you know, Guardiola spoke after the game about marginal things deciding things in football, and that is a marginal thing that may or may not have had an impact. Well, we know that Guardiola and Klopp were not happy at the 12:30 kickoff, but it's kind of been coming, hasn't it, with all the off-field issues and. Well,
that's it. Like, yeah, if there were no off-field issues, then maybe it would have been 5:30. Yeah. So, as much as the TV broadcasters don't help usually, and they're sort of convenient bogeyman at all times, I don't think it was them this time, because I don't think Sky wanted the game at 12:30, but they had to have it there because the local advisory group said it wasn't safe to have it any later.
There wasn't any issues with it?
No, there weren't any issues. So you could see the police sort of really visibly walking down the streets into the ground, so it was like it was a very big operation, and yeah, it seemed to have passed off without incident. The only sort of minor flashpoint was when Alexander-Arnold kind of celebrated in front of the City fans, which produced quite a few nice images. But yeah, there was a bit of talk like, oh, is that inciting the crowd? But that was that's pretty tame if that's as heated as it gets.
Well, hopefully we can actually talk about the football in a City-Liverpool game, which it's always been a good fixture, and it feels like the first game of the season is tighter than the second, if that's fair. And it was kind of like that. It was both teams really figuring each other out and not really wanting to make a mistake, I thought.
Yeah, it was strikingly different from the Chelsea game, whereas Chelsea from the off, it looked like both teams said, we've not got respect for you, we're tearing you apart, and both kind of went at each other. And Liverpool and City, it was a bit like, oh, we know how good you are, oh well, we know how good you are, so let's not. Both teams, and both coming, with a bit of weaknesses. City basically knowing we've nothing on the bench, and Liverpool knowing we've been torn apart here too many times, not kind of wanting to go full throttle too early. And two different teams, Liverpool are a different kind of pressing machine than they used to be when they had sort of Mane and Firmino and those type of players up front, and City are different this season as well, as we've known. So yeah, it was a different game, and it was. It's hard to say underwhelming, because, like you say, the first meeting between these teams is often a bit more tight. But yeah, I don't think it was two teams at their best, and the sort of the kick-off time and everything, I don't think it contributed to a classic.
I think they're both very happy to take a point. I think given where the table is, it's very tight at the top. Like you say, all those things, City have their injuries, Liverpool are still they're doing very well, but they're still trying to figure out their best team, I think.
I think on the balance of play, City could have won and had the better chances to win. And I don't think there would have been any complaints from Liverpool if City had won. and you got the soft goal with the foul on Alisson. However, I don't think City can say that they did enough to win. That Liverpool getting a draw felt unjust on City.
It felt like as soon as Alexander-Arnold scored, it was always going to be a draw. There was neither team really wanted to commit and risk losing. When they had a point.
And certainly the way City had attacked in sort of the 70 minutes before that, you thought, well, they're going to have to step it up in the final 20 minutes, and they didn't have any options off the bench, so it was tired legs trying to do something that they hadn't done all game. So the odds were against it, and 1-1 felt quite expected.
You mentioned the disallowed goal. I was in a bar full of other football fans and who don't necessarily like City at all, but everyone was completely, like, nobody knew why it had been disallowed. And it's one of those rules, isn't it, where if there's any pressure on the keeper, it's a foul. And I really don't like that rule, but I think it was harsh.
Every so often you get a goal that is given like that, and you get sort of half the room saying, well, fantastic is a goal, and the other half saying, well, 99 times out of 100 that's not given, so why has it been given this one time? I thought it was extremely soft to be ruled out, or under the current VAR rules where they want to give more pressure to the referee, not pressure, like responsibility, and they want to back him up more. He's saying, I've seen something on the keeper. There is something on the keeper, even if it's incredibly soft and not even enough to knock him down, never mind send him sort of spiralling into the net, clutching his foot. But it was very soft. But like Ake said after the game, that wasn't the reason for the draw. It might have been the reason for a win, because 2-0, I'm not sure Liverpool are coming back. I don't think they did anywhere near enough to score 2 goals. But after it wasn't given, it's kind of like, you've still got a lot of time to affect the game.
My first thought was the goal against Fulham, where Akanji got very, very lucky, and they admitted the goal shouldn't have stood. So you've got one where Akanji's got lucky and City have scored, and one where he's got unlucky and they've not scored. So it could be an example of them even himself.
Well, we keep getting told by other sets of fans how City get decisions that no other club does. So want to bank for a situation.
And if both had been right, then City probably would be 2 points better off. So that's another one for. It was refreshing as well that it wasn't a big talking point after the game. You didn't like Guardiola didn't bite about it. He didn't use it as an excuse.
And I don't like so much scrutiny on referees before a game, like at risk of sort of pontificating on journalism more widely. I don't kind of like every team is going to have had an issue with a ref before a game. Like, it doesn't need dredging up. Don't need to sort of guess who the referee supports. I saw before the game, Chris Kavanagh was a City fan, Chris Kavanagh was a United fan, Chris Kavanagh was a Liverpool fan. Like, it's irrelevant to his job, or if it was relevant, then it would have been sort of noted. But also, just put so much pressure on him to get the right decisions. And I thought he had an excellent game, and no one was talking about him after the game, which is credit to him. And we probably don't give enough credit to referees and VAR when they do most of the things right. I thought it was a soft goal. I thought it was soft to rule out the Diaz goal, but like you say, it's always given, and everyone always gets antsy about it. But it happens. Goalkeepers are overprotected by referees, so there was nothing kind of too incredible about the disallowed goal. So overall, I thought he and his team had a very good game.
There we are. If we carry on this podcast, we can have a praising referees section of how well the ref did. Which, before we go on to the part 2, we saw John Stones back in the squad on the bench, but then Pep says he needs a bit more time. Didn't have Jack Grealish. It was a bit of an odd team sheet, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think it was kind of the team. It was kind of the 11 that you were expecting, albeit with the late news that Grealish was out. Doku was obviously gonna start, but then there was just kind of nothing behind it, with Núñez and Kovacic out, and Grealish and De Bruyne, and Stones not really fit enough to play a part. City were if City wanted to change the game, they basically had Calvin Phillips or Oscar Bob, which is, however Doku, Foden, Alvarez might be playing, if they're not playing as well as you might want them to, they still might be playing better than you think Oscar Bob or Calvin Phillips could play.
Especially in a game like that.
Yeah. So it felt in the second half like City drifted. Like they were 1-0 up and they were like, right, let's play through this. And they were still playing, but there wasn't that kind of... It felt like it needed some fresh impetus, but they didn't have any fresh impetus to give. Liverpool made 5 subs, so it was constant changing from Liverpool, and let's see if this works, let's see if this makes a difference, and it did, and City just didn't have that, and that is the state of the squad. It's a reality. Had they had Stones able to play or others able to play, then they might have won the game.
And this was after an international break where we saw half the team get injured, and you still had Haaland back, you still had Rodri back. Nathan Ake had missed it, he was back. So it could have been worse.
But that's the thing, is sort of interesting for Leipzig now on Tuesday, because it's sort of, he will rotate, but who actually can he rotate? I missed Rico Lewis out earlier. So Lewis is playing against Leipzig and gets kind of more important by the minute, but it's not like you can say, oh, well, we'll give Rodri... Yeah, you could rest Rodri, but you can't rest most of your players because there aren't actually the options to come through.
Mm-hmm. Well, save that for part 3 when we talk about Leipzig. We'll be back shortly with part 2 where we go a little bit deep into a couple of individual performances against Liverpool. Hello, welcome back to the Talking City podcast. City won, Liverpool won at the weekend. A couple of interesting performances. Pep was very, very full of praise for Manu Akanji, wasn't he? He played in the sort of John Stones role coming into midfield. He's done it sort of well and not well in the past, hasn't he? I'm thinking the Champions League final, he creates the goal, but other times I've not been as convinced of him coming forward, but this was a better...
Yeah, and certainly before the international break at Chelsea, it just didn't work. He came forward and he struggled, and Chelsea had loads of joy going past him. And in the second half, they sort of said, you know what, forget that, just play at the back. And he was a lot happier and City were happier. So it was interesting that kind of City persisted then with pushing him up against Liverpool. And he did really well, and he looked really good alongside Rodri. Both of those players kind of controlling the middle spaces and turning out of situations very, very well. It is one of those, has he kind of learned, or is it sort of specific games and specific situations, and in some games he's going to be really good and some games he isn't, and it's not necessarily going to be possible to know beforehand whether he is or he isn't. But Guardiola was delighted with him and sort of said he's an option now in defensive midfield in a way that he wasn't before that Liverpool game. So he's obviously done enough to convince him that he can play that role while Stones is out. And I mean, Stones is back, but they want him to rest for, Pep said, 1 or 2 more weeks. So big game against Spurs at the weekend, big game against Villa next midweek. It doesn't sound like Stones will be playing in those games necessarily. So a big chance and test for Akanji to show that he can do that. Although if Lewis plays well in that role against Leipzig, then he might force his way in as well.
It just gives them more options, doesn't it? Because we've seen the right back inverting inside the left back. Now it's the centre back, but that was only Stones who could do it. And if you can have Akanji not doing it as well, but doing it to a good level that Guardiola's happy with, and he can pick and choose the games where he can let Akanji do it, it just increases the options, doesn't it?
Yeah. And also just shows how good Akanji has been since he arrived. Like, he's just able to pick up anything basically, and it's not like they have long on the training pitch or anything to do these things. He's just able to sort of process that information and turn it around. Yeah, he was probably one of his best performances at City.
We saw Nathan Ake come in at left back. He's sort of been second choice at left back this season, hasn't he? Guardiola's been preferred there. So I was surprised for two reasons, because Guardiola has started all the big games so far at left back, but also we thought Ake was injured. So how did Ake do? He got a very good assist, I thought, to jink inside.
Yeah, he was really good. You were watching him, and I turned to someone about 15 minutes in, and I was like, this feels like Ake from last season. And that in itself is a bit unfair, because it feels like Ake's contributions from last season have kind of been diminished, a bit like Grealish's have. It's like people have just forgotten how good a left back he was in keeping Salah quiet, keeping Saka quiet, and he kept Salah quiet almost all game, and it's a real shame for him, because it wasn't like he got done for the goal or anything. It was just that Salah found a bit of space and was able to pass to Alexander-Arnold, who came up with a really good finish. But basically Salah tried to go at Ake and just didn't get anywhere. And then also, had the intelligence to get the ball down. Liverpool were just kind of like all over the place when Alisson took that goal kick. It was like they all waited for it to go 50 yards further forward and didn't know what to do. So like two Liverpool players are like, why is Nathan Ake dribbling past me? Because Salah should have it up there. And Ake just waltzed past him, laid in Haaland, and that was one of the few times all game really where Haaland got the service that he wanted. So many times he made really good runs behind the Liverpool centre backs, and whoever was kind of on the ball didn't either chose another option or couldn't provide that pass. Whereas Ake was the one who got the assist.
Which is unlikely, isn't it? But I thought Ake was very good. It just gives them more options now at left back. There was quite an interesting. We were just chatting before we started. Jeremy Doku.
Yes.
He got more headlines for his dribbles all game. Everyone's saying how good he was. Was he man of the match in?
He was man of the match inside the stadium. Yeah.
But you're not convinced he had his best game?
No. I gave him a 6 out of 10, which prompted shock and horror and disgust from quite a lot of colleagues, actually. It was a strange one, because it felt like City got the ball to Doku more than they ever have, and the tactic so often was just get it to Doku and let him exploit, which we kind of said before the game. Like, Alexander-Arnold has his deficiencies defending. Doku can take him on, and he's in on the centre backs and can create a real chance. And I just felt that for all Doku had, he didn't do enough to test Alisson's goal. Now, it was a decent layoff to Alvarez when Alvarez should have done better and hit over on his right foot, and it was a decent ball in to Haaland when Alisson made the save just before Liverpool scored. But like, for his 11 completed dribbles, what has he got to show for it? Like, I can't remember a shot he had. There were so many times I sort of saw him with one defender or open sight of Alisson's goal. The end product wasn't there for me. And
is that a sign that he's doing sort of what Grealish did, where he's trying to decide what to do in the right situation, what Guardiola would want him to do?
Well, to play devil's advocate, I think if Jack Grealish put in the performance that Jeremy Doku did, everyone would be saying, Jack Grealish has got no end product, why aren't we? He doesn't test the goalkeeper enough, he doesn't put the balls into the box, why aren't we playing Doku? Whereas Doku's had that performance, and a lot of people have said, that is amazing, that is a brilliant performance, man of the match. And it's an interesting insight into an interesting topic, and there isn't a right answer. I suspect my view is probably seen as more wrong than right. But I watched Match of the Day back, and you barely see Doku. So it's like, well, fantastic, you've done 11 dribbles, well done. No one's ever done that in a few years. But like, and you've beaten Alexander-Arnold 7 times, I think you beat him. Congratulations. How many of them led to a goal? Well, none. And Alexander-Arnold went and scored, right? So who's had the better game?
Well, that was it. I think Alexander-Arnold was, I think, Sky's man of the match. Or
Yeah, he was,
he certainly got Gary Neville saying he could be the best right back in the world, but defensively, not the best. But then all around, he had probably a better game than most people on the pitch.
Yeah, and if you can, it never felt like Alexander-Arnold got sort of properly skinned in the way that sort of the winger isolates the fullback, takes him on, beats him, and he's in the box with sort of all of his options presented to him. I mean, Liverpool were very good defensively covering, but Liverpool didn't allow those situations to present themselves, or Doku didn't sort of do those situations. And, Doku, the spotlight on Doku shouldn't take the focus away from, say, thought Alvarez had his poorest game of the season. Foden wasn't brilliant either. And then you've also, behind them, you've got, Bernardo Silva, sort of, who played really, really well, but Pep said afterwards, like, Bernardo Silva and Alvarez cannot get the ball to Haaland or out wide like Kevin De Bruyne and Ilkay Gundogan can. And that is no slight on them to say, well, you're no De Bruyne. Well, they're not. And if City had a De Bruyne or a Gundogan in the game, able to feed Haaland when he was crying out for the ball so often, it could have been a routine win, but they didn't. And Doku had the majority of the ball and wasn't involved in setting up any goals. And you can say, oh well, Alvarez should have scored, and it wasn't that. It was a decent chance. It was one of City's best chances. It wasn't amazing. I don't think the XG on it was that high. And the same with Haaland's effort in the box. So yeah, I thought he was okay. I love watching him play, but I didn't think his dribbles necessarily led to enough.
I think it's understandable if he's performing better against the weaker sides and not doing as much in a game in terms of end product against the bigger sides, because he's 21, he's still learning. I think if everyone was fit, like you say, De Bruyne would be in, Stones would be in, Grealish would be in, I think, in a game like that. And that's a completely different side with a lot more control. And then you can bring on Doku at the end when you've just conceded. And that's a completely different game. So
or start him. Nothing against starting him. I thought he merited his start. But after 70 minutes of not really generating much, maybe you take him off then and bring Grealish on then and say do something for the last 20 minutes. Because Liverpool had clearly done their homework on Doku, and while the record books will state that Doku got a high of successful dribbles, the record books will also say Jeremy Doku had no say in a goal. So for Liverpool, it's job done.
I think he will do less in a game in terms of these stats and get more goals and assists.
Well, his last game against Bournemouth, he got a goal and 4 assists, and it's not to say that it should be all about goals and assists, but I just think it shouldn't all be about dribbles either, because you don't get any points for them.
Going to disappoint the fantasy football managers all over the place there. Well, I think that's almost everything from the City-Liverpool game, and City are back in action on Tuesday against Leipzig, and we'll be back after this break just to discuss whether there's any point following that game at all. Hello, welcome back to the Talking City podcast. Before we get into Leipzig, Pep had a little bit of a go, did he, about the atmosphere? He was asking for a bit more, but I think it all comes down to, again, the 12:30 kickoff. Yes,
so there's a few things to this. The atmosphere wasn't great. The home fans weren't great. The away fans weren't great. I think you can put that down to 12:30, and also time in the season when everyone feels like there's a bit less to that. The home fans thing is partly a 12:30 thing, and partly you're seeing a lot of people saying they're sort of selling their tickets or giving their tickets back to the club if they can't go, and the club are sort of selling them on to sort of newer fans who pay a lot for the ticket and pay a lot for merchandise while they're there, but aren't necessarily as familiar with their part to play in the atmosphere and things like that. Which doesn't, which helps the club generate money, but doesn't necessarily help the atmosphere. The other thing you've got is that we are, City and Etihad and atmosphere is this sort of circle of doom that never ends. And it partly never ends because Pep is often seen calling for more. And he does, but just because he calls for more doesn't mean it's terrible. Because he calls for more for Kevin De Bruyne and he calls for more from Erling Haaland when he scored 3 goals. Pep is going to call for absolutely everything he can do to try and win a game. And he calls for more than any other manager calls for, which is why he's won more than any other manager. And so it can get a bit annoying to always see sort of City and attendances in the headlines. And a lot of it is because Pep has done something or Pep has said something. But, Pep is doing or saying something because he's treating the fans as he does his players.
Just like he did last year against Tottenham with his Happy Flowers rant, and he included the fans in everybody else that he was saying we need more from. Yeah,
but principally against Tottenham, it was the players not protecting Rico Lewis, but also because then the fans booed at half time against Tottenham, and I think it was a broadcast interview after a few days later, and he said he preferred the booing fans to the one who just sat there and were ambivalent because he wants a reaction, he wants something. And he was asked about the fans after the Liverpool game and said, yeah, it happens. Sometimes, the team need to do more to engage the fans. So I think it's one of those things, and I don't think it should be turned into a big issue or City have got a problem with atmosphere. It was just one of those things where the whole day felt a bit flat. Like I was expecting more noise from City, but I was expecting more noise from Liverpool as well. And it's just kind of it was very early. It was very cold. Like, it's not ideal for the players. It's not ideal for fans to get up for a game like that.
I got the impression as well that it was a point in the game where he wanted more from City. But as we've discussed, they were getting a bit tired. There was no one on the bench. So what does he do? Can the fans give them a boost as well?
Yeah, exactly that. It was at the start of the second half, and City had not started the second half with any great purpose or direction. It was like autopilot, and Liverpool looked to be gaining a bit of traction. Pep is in the dugout when he sort of skulks about and asks for something, and then he sort of gets angry and calls for more from the fans, because he can do that. It wasn't a great atmosphere.
It might be better against Leipzig, or does the fact that City are...
Well, that's the thing. I haven't said, it's one of those things. It's
going to be cold again. There's not going to be much to play for.
Yeah, I think they will struggle to make it a good atmosphere against Leipzig. We'll get a light show, and it will be far superior to any light show you see at Old Trafford.
Flicking the lights on and off.
It's a struggle because there's nothing on the game. City need a point. They will get a point. If they don't get a point, they'll get a point or 3 at Red Star Belgrade. So it's very hard to get excited and motivated, and certainly if City score early or are in control of the game, there's not much not much at stake at all. And because of the size of the squad and the injuries and not everything like that, it's not like you can even say, oh, it's a good chance to see X play or Y play, like, because it's probably going to be a very similar, strong team.
I'm just trying to get on the table. Are Leipzig qualified? Because if they've got nothing to play for, it just feels like both teams are just shake on a draw before kick-off.
They need to beat City to still have chance of topping the group.
So they have something, yeah. But they know they're in the last 16, so
yeah.
I do get the impression that it's going to be a bit of a procession.
Yeah, well, I think I said last week, like, I had more confidence that City would win at home to Liverpool than I did Leipzig, because Leipzig kind of feels like both teams kind of say, all right, we'll just have a draw and move on in our schedules. But doesn't mean to say maybe we'll see a reaction to dropping points on Tuesday, but it does feel like there's very little excitement around the game.
We know that Rico Lewis is going to play. Pep said that. We can probably assume Guardiola's going to come in. Do you think anyone else is going to move around? Do you rest Haaland for this one? He's had a couple of niggles in international break.
I think Haaland will start. I think it might be a good game to give Alvarez a rest, because he did look really off it on Saturday, and it was just sort of like summed up City's international window that so many players had pulled out or whatever and stayed in Manchester, and apart from Alvarez, who'd gone around the world, done his usual thing, and was still expected to start at 12:30. So I think it might be a good game to see Alvarez, and Oscar Bob is good enough to be given a start in a game like this, and should be given starts in games like this, really, where there is still something to play for, and you can shine in a strong team around you, because there isn't the space to make that many changes. So maybe Bob for Alvarez might be one to see.
Do you think if we see Lewis, do you think it'll be the number 8 position like it was in Germany, or back at right back or left back like he played for England?
Yeah, I think it will. Well, I think he'll spend a long time opposite alongside Rodri. So I think he will be given the chance to play that role. But whether it's from fullback or dropping in from midfield, probably from fullback.
Yeah, it also feels like one where you can let Walker have a night off.
Yeah. Especially bring Guardiola in, and you've got Ake, Kanji Diaz, 2 of those. So I think Lewis should come in and let Walker have a rest, because again, he's played a lot of minutes.
And we can see Calvin Phillips for 20 minutes at the end.
Yeah. I mean,
you still don't think he can start? I wouldn't say.
No, it's one of those where there is so little riding on it, but there's probably enough riding on it for Guardiola to say.
And Leipzig are a side that can turn you over in midfield.
Yeah. I mean, the second best team in the group. So I think Rodri will start, and there's 5 days, isn't there, from Tuesday to Sunday till the next game. So there is enough recovery time for these guys to play all 3 games if they want to, and most of them will probably have to play the 3.
Yeah. Can I get a score prediction?
I will say 3-1 to City.
I'm not seeing goals in it. I think 1-1. I think similar to the weekend. I think they'll just both be happy for a point. Yeah. But and that's all City need, isn't it? So.
Yes. Yeah, and that is the big thing that Guardiola has been shouting about.
And if you can then go to Serbia with nothing to play for, ahead of the Club World Cup after a difficult period in the Premier League.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, I'm not kept up to date on the Youth League, but if there were a situation which might not be far off, can City go through if they win tomorrow in the Youth League?
I think they're through, but they need to confirm top spot and go straight to the last 16 rather than last 32.
Yeah. But if they could potentially box that off tomorrow, then it would be really exciting if Guardiola was able to try out some younger players in Belgrade, because when Newcastle came in the Carabao Cup, there was no chance to, because they just weren't ready. But maybe like Mike Hamilton's been around training and a few matchday squads and things like that. So Yeah, that would be a real bonus for the group.
But I was in Leipzig for the youth game, and that's the only one that they've not won, I don't think. But Leipzig did give City a tough game, so that'll be a good one in the youth league as well. That's it for now. We'll apologise for the noise outside. There's a bit of building work, so if you can hear that, if you can hear us over that, then hopefully that's good news. You know where we are. We're on Twitter, Facebook, well, whatever Twitter's called, YouTube, everywhere that you would expect to find us. TikTok as well. You can find us there. We're off to the press conference and the training to see who's fit and who isn't ahead of Leipzig. We'll have all the coverage as usual, and we'll be back, I believe, before the Tottenham game to look back on what's happened against Leipzig and look ahead to Tottenham. Thanks for joining us.